I received a comment on one of my Lars Anderson videos a few hours ago, and I admit I'm a little triggered here because, look, I don't make videos calling out specific people for their comments. I'm above that. And look, Dan, I'm sorry, I don't mean to call you out specifically, but the attitude in this comment is exactly what makes archery dangerous. I'll read the comment and I'll explain why this is such a terrible perception of what archery safety is. So the comment reads as follows: I can't believe I'm about to defend Lars Anderson, but the bow Lars is using can't really be called a weapon. It's a toy. If the arrowheads he's using are really blunt, which I imagine they are, then the only risk is a small bruise or maybe poking out an eye. And do note that those people are facing away from him. Where do we start with this? Firstly, the bow Lars Anderson is using can't really be called a weapon, it's a toy. No sane archer is going to call their bow a toy. What on earth gives you the impression that what Lars is using is any less a weapon than anything used elsewhere? And the irony of this is that so many people are harping on about how this is war archery, this is hunting archery, and these things are weapons. And suddenly you come up and say that this is just a toy. What makes it a toy? Is it draw weight? Well, a 30-pound bow can still skewer a rabbit. That is not a toy. Those plastic bows with dental floss, with arrows, with suction cups, those are toys. This is not a toy. No sane, responsible shooter will ever call their gun a toy. And no sane, responsible archer will ever call their bow a toy. And what Lars Anderson is using is not a toy. He is more than capable of harming a person. If the arrowheads he's using are really blunt, I like how you've included the really blunt as if it makes a difference. He's using broadheads. They're designed to cut through your flesh. This is a blunt broadhead. It's not razor sharp. I can put my fingers over it. It's not going to cut me. The point isn't very sharp either. This is blunt. From a 30-pound bow into a soft foam target, that is still dangerous. And there's a part about which I imagine they are. Right, like how we assume that every firearm is safely unloaded. I don't know, there's just something about the apparent certainty that Lars Anderson is absolutely using the safest possible blunt broadheads. No, he's using real broadheads. There's no if here, he clearly shows it in his video. Then the only risk is a really small bruise. Have you ever seen an arrow cause a small bruise? Ever? I've covered a news report where somebody stabbed someone with a blunt target point and it punctured. Not very deeply, but it punctured. That's still more than a small bruise. You get one of these from a 20 or 30-pound bow, that will go clean through your neck. That is not a small bruise. Or maybe poking out an eye. Gee, I like how it's not that big a deal. Small bruise, losing an eye, yeah, same thing. And do note that those people are facing away from him. And yeah, shooting someone in the back of the head is safer than the front. There are so many incidents of people who think that it's safe to stand in front of a bow and nearly get killed.
Oh, that almost got me in the stomach, son. I'm back on away from you. You're getting kind of dangerous here. Look at the...
Never ever assume that a bow is just a toy. It doesn't matter what kind of bow, it doesn't matter how heavy it is or how strong it is not a toy. It's true that not everyone sees it as a weapon, but you cannot dismiss it as a toy. Even LARPers who play around with these foam arrows have strict restrictions on what can and can't be used because of safety. You don't screw around with bows and arrows, and you don't encourage people to screw around with bows and arrows. And by the way, I'm not taking another swipe at Lars. Believe it or not, I trust Lars Anderson. He has the practical experience to know what can and can't be done. In fact, this is what he said to me in a message quite a while ago regarding my concerns about safety. So when I talked about the idea of shooting at people with the turning arrows trick, this was his response. Shooting around people was definitely not dangerous, but probably the only way to show that it was not luck. And that's a showmanship thing, I get that. Really many practical tests, and if it does not work, the arrow moves outwards and not in. I generally work a lot with safety direction, so I'm mistaken, so I always know what way the arrow moves. And just to smooth it out a bit, basically the turning arrows trick which he does, if he makes a mistake, the arrow will continue to fly away from the person and won't bend any further in than he intended to. And that I actually do believe. It makes physical sense when you understand how the bow and arrow interacts, and the fact that he's done this hundreds of times means he knows what the arrow will do. It's still a risk, but I would trust Lars Anderson to shoot at me. Please don't. But I wouldn't trust someone who regards bows as toys. And again, I'm sorry, Dan, I don't want to call you out and put you on the spot where you can't speak out for yourself, but it's the attitude behind the comment. Everything about that comment is wrong. It is deadly wrong. And on that note, it's just an observation I've made in this comment section that there's a huge divide between people who actually learn archery in a formal, organized environment, people who've actually trained in archery, and people who haven't trained in archery. Because people who train in archery are drilled with the safety aspect first. The people will say that, okay, it's not dangerous. These are often people who don't have formal archery training. So who are you going to trust more? The people with actual practical experience, or the people sitting in the armchair saying, oh, it's fine? Whether or not you see a bow as a weapon is a matter of perspective. Personally, I see my Olympic bow as sports equipment, but at the same time, it can hurt someone if I misuse it. The same way a baseball bat is just sports equipment until someone gets hit. So anyway, I apologize for the bluntness of this video, and again, I do apologize to Dan for making it sound perhaps a lot harsher than it was intended, but you can't convince me that a bow is a toy. And I hope that this has enlightened you a bit more. Whatever you do with archery, make sure you always prioritize safety first.